Irie Myrie and friends will discuss the political problems with famous pollster John Anderson and Vicky. January of 2023, the coordinated activity touching the approach just between 2016 and 2022. So the whole also ended by the year and then in January 2023, we had a remember to join Irie Myrie and Rosalind Taylor with social media's right manual, Camila Forrest. He's an educator, LNP researcher at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Irie Thompson, and of course, the poster under the spotlight, Mr. Don Anderson. So follow Irie Myrie and friends now. You both want to win.
It's that time again when we welcome you to another show in Series 4 of the Irie Myrie and Friends show. I am Colin Irie Myrie, along with co-host Ralston Chamberlain. It is indeed our pleasure to have Mr. Dan Anderson, a market researcher, who is the CEO of Market Research Limited. Dan is known as the man behind the Dan Anderson polls. Dan is a seasoned pollster. Most Jamaicans associate him with the Dan Anderson polls, which gives an indication of how Jamaicans view political issues. His work is not only monitoring political trends, but also providing vital information and business decisions. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Joining us as participants in our discussions, our first timer, Dr. Irie Thompson, who is a professor on educational policy, planning and project director of Rules Governance Recommendation Implementation Committee. He is author of 8 books, 18 journal articles, and over 200 newspaper columns, in which he discusses a variety of issues on accountability, corruption, development, education, justice, and leadership. Irie is a social activist who is active on social media, particularly X, where he engages in debates and speaks fearlessly to those who hold power. Welcome, Professor Irie Thompson. We have regular contributor, Dr. Myrie, who is not here as yet. We should have Kamala Forbes, who is not here as yet. And we have Mr. Anthony Fisher. You know, he's a journalist and a media practitioner. You know, Mr. Owen Speed should be here. He's not here as yet, but we will. And last but not least, Commander Lady Bennett. You know, he is a second time right here. So, welcome, gentlemen. And this week's show, we will be taking a look at the importance of polling as it relates to political parties and Dan Anderson findings as per the recent commission poll by the People's National Party. Our show is being streamed on Facebook Live on the following pages: Irie Myrie, Irie Friends, YouTube, Irie_Myrie, X, formerly known as Twitter, address Irie Myrie, and Instagram at Irie_Myrie. We look forward to an engaging and educational discussion. Views expressed by our guests are not necessarily the views of the Irie Myrie and Friends show. Over to you, Ralston.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you, Colin, and thank you to our guests. Let me just say from the outset, welcome. And this show is going to take 2 parts because we have Don here and we want to get as much information from him as possible to clarify what is out there in the public domain. So Colin and I are going to put some questions to him and get some answers. And then if our guests want to weigh in and ask a couple of questions, then they are free to do so. But what we want is to make sure that Don gives us as much time in clarification as much as possible. So, Don, you're going to be in the hot seat today in the sense that we want to make sure that our listeners and viewers understand your technique, how you do your polls, and how you analyze the results. So you have indicated that you have been doing polls for several years, and in your article this morning in the you stated that you've gone into political field since 1989, and by my calculation, that's about 45 years ago. If you could explain to our viewers and our listeners what could be the rationale in your mind why parties seem to get so irked up and so worked up when the poll is not in their favor.
All right, thank you very much for having me on your program, and welcome the opportunity to talk, because for me, it's always an educational moment as far as I'm concerned, because I think a lot of what is driving the kind of comments that you hear to a large extent is lack of awareness of the importance of political polling, but also it is very clear that historically, when you produce a poll finding that's not in favor of one party, then the other one, that party cries foul and say, no, and tries to discredit the polls, as if by carrying that kind of agenda, they're likely to gain more support for themselves. And I don't think there's any empirical data anywhere to suggest that discrediting polls attracts anybody to you. As a matter of fact, nowadays, people are now becoming quite wary of and understand fully when parties cry foul and blame it on anybody else except themselves, because to a large extent, when a party is trailing, certainly in my polls, it means that's precisely what is happening in the environment. All right. Now, I just want to use a minute and say that you're right. We've been in the business of market research since 1975. That's about 49 years, right?
Yeah.
And in 1989, we were encouraged by Edward Seaga to get into political polling. We were doing some work for him for the Boston Institute of Public Affairs. So Mr. Seaga was the one who actually pulled me into political polling. And since then, we've done work for both political parties. In the 2016 election, probably that epitomizes best of all the point I'm making, because we did an equal amount of work for the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party through Mr. Seaga. We're talking about maybe 20 national polls and about 55 constituency polls during the 2016 campaign. All right. And you don't work for two competing entities unless they have confidence in you. Let's put it that way. We go on record as saying that we did that work in 2016 leading up to the election. Question is, and I plotted the situation from the 2016 poll. You made reference to the Jamaica, the Sunday Gleaner article today. I plotted the 2016 to 2024 period, over which time we did 14 or 15 national polls, in addition to maybe several hundred constituency polls for both political parties. And I did that because I wanted to just present some information to the public, and the public that wants to know exactly what the data has said and how has the data stacked up in terms of political polling predictions, stacked up in terms of political outcomes. And in a nutshell, what it says is that in 2016 election, we were spot on. In the 2020 election, we were spot on. And in the 2024 local government election, we were so spot on that when we indicated that the JLP had a 1 percentage point lead from a trend where they were leading by up to 10 percentage points average up to the beginning of 2023, down to a 1% lead at the start of the 2024 election in February, that tells you that a trend had set in. All right, the trend is what is more important than a standpoint or camera shots. All right. So when we predicted that the election was going to be close, and the Gleaner headline just the day before the election said close call within 1% of each other. How many days did it take the electoral office to declare who was the winner? And I think there's still, the jury is probably still out amongst the political parties as to who won that election. So when you compare that prediction of the 2024 election with the fact that it took 4 days or more and 4 calls and recounts to determine who really won, the PNP claimed the popular vote, which they did win. And the Jamaica Labour Party claimed the number of councils, which they did win. That's 1% within a margin of error, plus or 3%. That's an absolutely dead-on, spot-on, accurate, completely reliable piece of data. Yet, we come out with a poll 2 months later, 6 weeks later, and I make the point in today's Gleaner that the PNP were smart because they saw the trajectory, they saw the momentum and said, let's do a poll right away to find out what is happening 6 weeks after the local government election. And true to form, as some ministers have asked me, how can the thing shift from 1 percentage point in February to 7 percentage points 6 weeks later? It's not that. It is the trend from where they were a year ago, 12 percentage points behind, to 1 percentage point behind at February, to plus 7.8 percentage points. It's a trend. And the trend data is really what is more important than a snapshot at a point in time. Let me pause there, and I hope that I've given you an umbrella perspective of the situation. But lastly, I made a point in the article this morning that, you know, the political polls are loud for obvious reasons. It's public knowledge. But when we work for the World Bank, as we do right through the Caribbean repeatedly, when we work for all the major commercial banks in Jamaica, financial institutions, big corporate entities, fast food companies, etc., 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 as we've done over these 49 years, there's nobody who would, in their right mind, try to jeopardize that business for 5% of political voting work. It would make absolutely no financial sense or business sense. So let's lay it to rest. I hear all the criticisms about it being contrived and so on. We're absolutely foolish and stupid, apart from unethical, unprincipled, and unprofessional, to ever think about doing anything except presenting data as we find it. But the trend explains that 7.8 percentage jump for the People's National Party in the recently concluded April 4th to 12th poll that we did. It's not a thing out of the blue. It's a continuation of a trend we set in for the beginning of 2023, where the PNP became far more competitive compared to that average of 10-12 percentage points behind for 6 consecutive national polls over 6 years.
I hear, let me just follow up before I hand over to Colin, because I hear you make a lot of emphasis on trend. What would you say is driving that trend? Is it that the PNP has a message that is resonating with the people?
I think there are a number of factors that are at play right here. I make the point also, again, pardon my reference in the article, but when a government is in second term, especially a government that has a significant majority at 49 to 14, they tend to make a lot of missteps because arrogance sets in, and they make a lot of blunders that the general public looks on and say, you know, these people are becoming arrogant, and you know, maybe it's time for a change. The People's National Party slogan, I think, or the message that they carried in the 2024 February election was, I think, you know, ready for the change or time for a change or something to that effect, which resonated with a lot of the supporters because the voting public has been able to identify a number of quote-unquote missteps that were made by the Jamaica Labour Party over the last couple of months. And we don't need to list them all. I mean, we're talking about the salary increases that they gave themselves, the issue with the speaker and the clerk of the courts, a number of different things that have come to the play. But the most important factor is I want to make reference to the business and consumer confidence surveys that we do for the Chamber of Commerce. We've been doing that survey for the past 23 years continuously, day in, day out. So we have about 85 quarters of data that we can look back at. And what is coming out in these business and consumer confidence surveys, which are reported to the public, by the way, every quarter. We just had one report in April, is that whilst the macro picture is looking decent, you know, say unemployment is down to low record low of 4%, the inflation rate seems to be under control, etc., etc., etc. While the macro picture looks very good, we are finding out from the general public that the benefits that would normally accrue or would be expected to accrue from that kind of macro positive are not trickling down. And therefore, people are saying that jobs are difficult, unemployment at 4%, jobs are difficult to find, jobs have never been plentiful, and therefore they're getting jobs, some of them, but they're not getting long-term jobs, they're not getting jobs that are paying well, and therefore they're not this trickle-down effect. So there is a growing dissatisfaction amongst people who are not able to meet their daily expenses. For another reason, our data says that every year we come back with this information, 85% of the people that we interview in the sample say prices have gone up extremely high over the last 12 months. And therefore, when you put all of these factors together, you can see a number of missteps. And I haven't mentioned all of them, a number of missteps and challenges that the general public has faced. And, you know, they're saying, boy, you know, maybe the PNP is an option. They're not sure yet, but they're saying maybe the PNP is an option. And when you look at the performance of the People's National Party in the 2024 election compared to what they did in the 2020 election, they came out with 14 seats out of 63. In the local government election, they came out with a popular vote. So guess what? There's a certain factor called the bandwagon effect. We know the wagonists. When things looking good, they jump on that side. They jump on the horse that's looking like they're going to win the race. And we have no doubt that some of what we picked up in the 4th to 12th April poll is as a result of that. So the trend was there, and that has been accelerated by the fact that people said, boy, the PNP look like them could win the election, and let me get on that side. Okay? Besides which, I mentioned another point. The People's National Party has traditionally had the support of the older age cohort. But in the last couple of years, when we did polls, we found that that was dissipating. People are getting older, some are dropping off the spectrum. But they're losing that support. And we're gaining any support amongst the younger 18 to 24. What we're finding in the 23 to 24 period is that that 45 and over age group is coming back into the People's National Party fold. Not only that, but they're also attracting some of the 18 to 24 age group. The challenge with that 18 to 24 age group, it is the least of the age cohorts that want to go out to vote. So they're not a whole heap of numbers to get from that segment because there's a great turnoff and not a turn on amongst the 18 to 24. Those that are becoming of voting age aren't over the keen. And all these factors are playing right now. And the People's National Party, as I indicated in the article this morning, appears to understand marketing better now. And I addressed audiences, political audience, and I say, guys, you think you're into politics, you're not into politics, you're into marketing. You have a product you want to get over to the people, and you have to find how, when, where, and what's the key message that you're going to use. That's what politics is about. And politicians don't seem to get it. That is a strategy that you have to ensure that you are delivering what people really want and not giving those benefits out like that. People have been concerned about, well, how can the PNP have 7.8 percentage points and they just release a budget now that is so favorable? Has anything trickled down to anybody in the 2 months? People are not looking for promises in the budget. They're looking for things that are going to mean something to their bottom line and their ability to go out and shop and take care of their families. But that hasn't affected anybody yet. So I wouldn't expect that the JP would gain any significant numbers by virtue of that, especially against the background of challenges that they've had in other areas that we don't want to even identify and itemize. There are a number of challenges that they have faced. So that's my long spiel on that.
Okay, thank you very much. You are basically or partially answered one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Anyway,
I can finish the other half so you can get a complete answer.
yeah, I would want to explain to the listeners the recent poll that was commissioned by the PNP to find it, what this is saying as opposed to appeal, and what is this significant differently by the PNP.
All right, first of all, let us discount who it was done for. I think I covered that in my preamble.
Yeah, that's what
But whether I do it for the PNP or the JLP or the Gleaner or the RJ or the Observer does not matter to me. And as a political pollster and professional market research company, it does not matter to me who wins. I just want to put that on the record. All right. I mean, let me just make one key point that might put everything to rest. My best political friend ever is Portia Simpson Miller. My best political friend ever. I worked along with her in my other capacity as Olympic Association Vice President for as long as she was a Minister of Government and Prime Minister. So I developed a really good friendship with her over and above my political polling. In the 2007 election, when she called me 4 days before to tell me she could win the election, I said, Madam, based on what I'm seeing, I don't think so. And on the day before the election, on the Sunday before the Monday, I called the election, 32 for the JLP, 28 for the PNP. Portia was, still is, my best political friend. I saw it, 32 for the JLP, 28 for the PNP. I called it that way on national CVM television. And on the night of the election, the results were JLP 32, PNP 28. What more can I say?
right side.
Okay. So the 7.8% is a continuation of a trend we're setting from the beginning of 2023, when that 11 percentage gap going up to 16% in 2020, when they won the 49-13, 49-14. It went up to 16 percentage points. The JLP was 16 percentage points ahead of the PNP in July or thereabout 2020. That just said right away, this is a total washout. And sure it was. 2 months later when the election was out, 49-14. Everything is consistent, you know? And the trend is what is really the reason for that 7.8% movement for the People's National Party. And I've given the kinds of build up to it and factors that have accounted for that jump since the election of 24 February, because there was a 12 percentage point shift to the PNP between 2020 and 2024. 12 percentage point shift. That's huge.
Yeah. I want you to just explain, because part of, as you indicated, part of our discussion is to educate people on how polling is done. And what I want you to kind of explain to our listeners is, how do you go about choosing your sampling? Where do you go? I hear people saying, oh, nobody asked me anything. How come they do a poll and nobody asked me? I didn't see anybody. How do you go about choosing the sample that you want to work with?
All right. You will appreciate I won't give you all the detail that we have. You will appreciate. I'm in a public forum. All right. But you know, I get asked this question. I run into the supermarket and people recognize me and they said, yeah. How come nobody never come to my yard and interview me yet? And I give them what they might think is a facetious answer. I said two things. I said, well, somebody has answered for you. And nobody has known my opinion. I said, guess what? When we interview 1,000 households, 1,000 households in a national poll across Jamaica, it means that we have not gone to 699,000 households. Can I make any sense? And when we interview 1,000 persons, it means that we have interviewed 2,100,000 persons. So it's understandable if somebody will say, well, nobody came to interview me, that can be accurate, because we're using that 1,000 sample as a proxy for the rest of the population. The key thing is that that sample has to be nationally representative. It has to be reflective of the population from which it was chosen. And I can say as much that every time we design our sample of 1,000 or 1,100, as the case might be, we ensure by proper statistical means that that sample reflects accurately the total population from which it is chosen. All right. So we will get, in other words, the number of persons interviewed in the sample, number of males, would be equivalent to the total number of males within the population. So that allows us to project up to the total population of males. All right. Now, there are times when you need larger samples. But the argument, argument is that, and I'm putting on my lecturing hat now, pardon me. All right. Because I've done a lot of teaching to postgrad students that use the same research methods. Thing is, a lot of people have said to me, but if you did a sample of 3,000 people, then it's more accurate. No, not necessarily. That sample would only be more accurate if it is more representative than that 1,000. Well, we're proven by basis from doing thousands of 1,000 samples over the time that you can design a sample accurately, reliably representative and reflective of the total population, which would be 1,500, 1,200, 1,100 sample, and be able to project up to the total population without having to do 3,000. If you do 3,000, what you tend to do is to increase the cost to the client without the necessary commensurate increase in the reliability from the sample. And if you check it, I just for the fun of it, in the Clinton versus Trump election, I studied and I examined about 72 polls that were done in the 6 months prior to the American elections in that year. And I think there are about 3 of them that had a sample size larger than 1,500. What's the population of the United States? 300 million voters. I mean, what more can I say? So to argue that you need a larger sample size, and let me tell you, the theory is that if you need to analyze the smallest subsegment of a population, in other words, if I wanted to know, well, boy, men within the 18 to 24 age group in Kingston are very important to me in a national sample. Then when you get down to that micro level and you want to get a good enough base to analyze men who are 18 to 24 in Kingston, you need a larger overall sample for you to get a large enough number of men in that age group to be able to project it. But if you just need a national sample that will reflective of the overall population, then a 1,000 sample, a 1,100 sample will give you a very accurate representation because it is representative of the population. I've spent a lot of time to explain that because, and I know tomorrow when I go into the supermarket or somewhere, people are going to say, oh, you never interview me yet. And we'll live here for 10 years. You could live here for 15 years and may never get interviewed. But the fact of the matter is that we design a sample which is representative. And we try to stay away from professional respondents. In other words, we tend to ask them if you have been interviewed in the last 3 months, and if they say yes, we don't interview them. We give you somebody else like that in that same category.
That was going to be my next. That was going to be my next.
Preempting you.
Repeat.
Preempting you. No, because we get professional respondents.
Yeah. But let me put this. This is my final question, and then I'm gonna hand over to Colin. We hear this argument, the PNP base is energized, they're energized. And I know you talk about the whole bandwagonist thing. Would that energized base have any bearing at all on the poll?
Yeah, we're picking up. Yeah, as you say, we talk about the 13 polls we've done over this time. That's a lot of national polls, right? We've done 5 since the beginning of 2023. Probably 6 actually, but and there's no question that based on what we're seeing, the change in the trend between 16 and 22 and 23 and 24 is evident. So we say, well, what's going on? And we're seeing where the older age cohorts, which has traditionally been the People's National Party's strongest supporters, appear to be coming back out. And let's put it this way. Between the 2011 election, or the 2012 election and the 2020 election, right? The People's National Party lost, I use that word advisedly, lost approximately 170,000 voters. Now, this is a very important piece of information for those who really want to analyze the data carefully. In other words, in the 2020 election, 170,000 people less voted for the People's National Party than voted for them in the 2012 election. All right? Now, what happened to the Jamaica Labour Party in the same time? Their numbers increased by 4,000 voters between 2012 and 2020. What does that tell you? That the difference between the outcome of the election in 2020 and 2012 was that a whole vacuum of support fell out of the People's National Party bucket. So it's not that the Jamaica Labour Party increased its voter count so much to gain 49. It was that a huge segment, like almost 30% of those who normally voted for the People's National Party, dropped out between 2012 and 2020. And that is what created that 49-14. Now, I think they're smart enough, and this is why I make the point that they seem to understand marketing better nowadays. What it seems as if they've been doing is actually trying to pull some of that support back into the fold. And I think when you look at the numbers that voted for them in the 2024 February election, it suggests that they're beginning to reap that success. Or the success from those efforts.
Colin,
you muted Colin.
Okay, here. I was just going to say that you talk about 170,000 from 2012, but just saying that in 2020, it was 127,000 or something like that, almost 130,000 that didn't turn up in 2020.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, that it's a whole heap of dropout from there. Now, what is happening? That even though the voter turnout average was lowest ever at 29% in 2024, actually more persons turned out to vote in the 24 election than did in 2020 election, or thereabouts, And what is important to note is that the People's National Party got the majority of that vote.
Yes.
So everything is so logical. I don't know why people are screaming. It is so logical that from a dropout of 2020, the numbers that I've seen, the PNP got more support in the 2024 election. It was a swing of 12 percentage points toward the PNP between 20 and 24. So the 7% gap that you see in 6 weeks after, and a strategically timed poll, is just a continuation of what has happened, which is a pulling back, a coming back to the fore of a number of supporters who did not turn up in the 2020 election.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question for you. I know we sometimes touch on your answer the questions, or in your comments.
Preempted.
Yeah. So I want to know, in your article in the Journal today, you concluded by saying that it appears that PNP is better appreciating the importance of marketing. Explain to our listeners what you meant by that.
Well, first of all, let us go back to the 2016 to 2022 period. Absolute chaos, right? For the People's National Party. Chaos. I mean, they had multiple quarrels, dissensions, competition for positions, leadership challenges, all kinds of things that disrupted the perceived unity of the People's National Party. So it was a period of a very messy thing, which they said to me, they do understand that in order to get support, I mean, you have a product and you want to sell that product, the image has to be good, the product has to be good, you have to convey it properly, and you have to minimize disaffection. PNP didn't understand that. So between 2016 and 2022, there was a myriad of problems that they faced, which dragged their numbers down. I think somewhere along the line, they're beginning to understand that we have to present a unified front. And nobody could claim that it is a totally, completely, fully unified party, but we have to present a unified front. All right? And guess what? We have to also ensure that the product looks good. And I think they're beginning to understand that. And they have done a considerable number of constituency polls to try to arrive at the best candidates. And I believe that And that is in itself a challenging situation because candidates who feel they should be elected or selected to run in constituencies and are not picked are beginning to get disgruntled and so on. But they've been able to smooth that over. They weren't able to do that in 2016 to 2022. So I believe that when you take a look at everything else, I believe that they're beginning to understand that politics is about marketing. And I've consistently maintained, I have sat down and I have addressed political audience and I have said, first of all, you guys think that you're into politics. And people think that is a madman. I mean, you're into politics. I said, no, you're not into politics, you're into marketing. Because you have a product that you want to deliver to people and you want it in the best possible shape and the right message to get it to them. I believe the People's National Party is beginning to do that. Whereas, of course, the JLP, by virtue of being consumed with government and making hard decisions, are facing those kinds of problems in a society where the voting public is becoming disenchanted because they're not getting the benefits of what they see around them as being macro positives.
So what you're asking, you're gonna work it out?
We want to thank Don Anderson. Let me just open the discussion to our other panelists. Is there anything that Don has said that you want to challenge him on? Is there a question that we have not asked that you would want to ask? Then this is the opportune time for you to put it to him. Or if you want to weigh in on anything. I know Lieutenant had really started the discussion before we come on here and wanted to share a few pointers. So Don, if you want to stay with us.
Yeah, I'll stay another 15 minutes if you don't mind.
And
I'll answer any question anybody wants to ask.
If you don't mind, Ralston,
please.
I want to ask Don just two questions. Thanks, Don, for the clarification. I am one of those persons who I don't believe in questioning polls. I always say don't shoot the messenger and stuff. Go and figure out what you are not doing, why we're getting a particular message. But so my first question to you, based on your experience, can a poll be skewed?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, of course it can be. If you don't know what you're doing, and if you deliberately don't want to present true information, you can skew a poll. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm throwing this question in there.
No problem, man. Ask me, I'll answer it.
Get answer or not. But one of the first person who came out when this poll was presented was a former member of the People's National Party. And her argument was that, hey, I have been there, I have seen this trick before, and this is what is happening again. How would you respond to that comment?
I have no idea what she's talking about, and I really wouldn't know how to respond to that. If she has seen it, I think she should share that information with people.
Okay. All right, that's it from me.
Well, yeah.
Lieutenant.
Yes, Lake Bennett here. Don, the pleasure is totally mine. I'm telling you, having you here, because in 1996, while I was at the U.S. Naval War College, the staff college,
Right.
I had the good fortune of doing some strategy and being asked, who would I take on board my team? And I said a pollster. And
Interesting.
yeah, to do my strategy. And as I said, I'm not looking on the cons of it because the pros is where you really cemented a lot of the things. As I said earlier to Ralston and Colin,
Right.
the benefit of the representative sampling, because you get a larger opinion from the population, insight of public opinion, predictive power,
Absolutely.
that you gain there. Informed decision making. Me, as the commander on the ground there, holding me accountable. You understand?
Absolutely.
And I can gauge the public approval from it. And just encouraging engagement. And in this instance, we're talking about political engagement.
Right.
But in the military fora, you talk about the whole business of stimulating public interest in participation and so forth. So I really, really found it, using it, everything you have explained, and even this is what should drive a lot of our crime prevention
Absolutely.
policy. And I found it, I really say we have some treasure in Jamaica. I'm now domiciled in Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
But I tell you, the whole business of it for me is just fabulous to see the interoperability of the idea. It's
Right.
just fabulous.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thank you for your comment, lady. Commander, they call you, right? Yeah. No, that's a joy. It's a joy for me, really,
All right.
Joy for me.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Oh, yes.
I think
Sure.
I'm where
I-
Go ahead.
Hello? Yes, you hearing me?
Oh, Lord. It's loud and clear.
Okay, good night. The great
Right,
doc.
come already.
Oh, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
The pleasure is mine to finally be able to interact with your daughter all the time in GOA as a physiotherapist.
Okay. So
After
you wait
January-
until after I leave the GOA to do
Yes,
that,
but
see?
she interacted with my mom, Marcia Swire Forbes.
Of course. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
she was on several of my teams. But y'all don't know, folks, I was the chef de mission for 5 of Jamaica's Olympic team, the Usain Bolt and all those people. That's the pleasure side of my life. That's another discussion.
Pleasure. So just as Karen has taken over from you, I have taken over from Marcia.
Clearly, please tell her hi for me.
Definitely. So it is my pleasure to interact with you.
Okay.
I marvel when I see politicians on both sides question pollsters, especially a pollster of your ilk. I mean, I grew up hearing about the Don Anderson poll, and my father reveres you. My father is a demographer by profession.
Okay.
Worked at Statin as the director of surveys for years.
Right.
So whenever I've been raised to respect polls and data. Data is key.
Yeah.
So the fact that the party that I support has finally decided to actually respect the data and to be driven by data is basically heaven for me. I just find it so odd that the government, you have members of the government. I'm happy to hear Anthony saying that he has no issues with the polls, because on social media every day we are at social media war with members or supporters of the government who curse us out because we pay off Don, and Don is a comrade, and Don skewed the poll. So we've heard it all,
Yeah.
But the thing about it is we have come a long way and we can map the progress over time. I am so sorry that I missed your entire conversation. Most of it, I came in at the end to hear you basically state that politics is marketing. It's so ironic that I also host a live show on the internet, and I said this exact same thing a few nights ago. Politics is marketing, and we have to look at politicians as products with a life cycle. We have to plot them on a bell curve at times. And the night that your poll, the RGR shared your poll about the favorability ratings, I basically spoke about that, the fact that
Andrew Holness is a mature product and is way down. And Mark Golden is a brand new product. And while his negativity ratings were low, it's because he was unknown, an unknown product. So you have to take that part of it into account. And now you have to find a way to change the strategy in how you market Andrew Holness, because it's a different type of product now overall. You know, so I was very happy to hear you say that.
Okay.
And I mean, it doesn't only go for Andrew Holness, but for every single politician, as you have stated. You can no longer just look at politics in isolation. We are marketable products, even though we're humans. I was in pharmaceutical marketing for years, about over 10 years. So I understand marketing a product, you know. So as I say again, the pleasure is mine to finally be able to interact with you. You are a legend in my.
Thank you very much. You have in the program again tomorrow. I come back in.
All right. I'm going to defend Antonino because he's not here in any position of the JLP. I'm gonna make that clear. So,
Well, person I hear saying that he respects POLSTER. Everyone commented, we heard him attacking the POLSTER earlier.
And Ralston, I am not afraid to say that I at this point in time in history, I am more favored to the JLP than the PNP. I have voted for both parties. I consider myself as a Jamaican, and I look at my choices at the time when I vote. And at this point in time, I lean to the JLP. I'm not afraid to share.
And you come to us with
Absolutely nothing wrong with that.
come to the discussion with critical thinking.
Exactly.
Right. Nothing wrong with that.
Owen, here's a chance, and then I'm gonna let Don go, because Don, I wanted to get into this.
No, that's okay, man. No, man. I just comment on here that I don't want to comment.
All right, go ahead, Owen.
I did not want Don to leave, you know. I want to say Dr. Don. But good evening to the panelists, yes, and to everybody watching, you know, in Jamaica and around the world. I know that this is an international program, you know. Kudos to the organizers and all the hosts and so on. But you said something, Don, but before I get into that, I just want to say I think with all the people who have been issued with all kinds of accolades and so on, I think you, as someone who has stood up and you have stood out in your field, I think that there should be something special for you.
I hope the right people are listening.
Yes, and I really believe so, because I've not found a time that you have gotten it wrong. Yes, I am one of the skeptics about polls. I used to be, because, you know, I have been on the voters list since 1986, and I've never been interviewed. So, you know, I truly thought then why I couldn't be one of those lucky ones. You know,
Right.
are they really going around and interviewing people, or are they just coming up with these things? You know, but I grow with maturity, you get to understand that there are some things that you can do without meeting out and reaching out to every single person to get an opinion. You know, so I would love to be able to call you Dr. Don. You know, you work at the University of the West Indies, and they always issue some kinds of doctoral honors on some people.
Well, I hope they think about it.
Yeah, but quite frankly, and you know, because I was very serious saying what all that I just said. But quite frankly though, I believe, and when I heard you said that the marketing is a big part of what we do, I am aspiring to become a politician. And I truly believe that marketing is a big part of what we do. Some products are more easily sold. Some sell themselves, really.
Yes.
And then the messages and so on, the timing has to be right as well for the message to resonate with people. So timing as well as, you know, being in marketing, all of those things.
Yes.
And help to form the trend that we are seeing. I don't know why people are worried about what is happening. The government has made many missteps, and we don't have to name them. They know them, we know them. The entire Jamaica knows them. So it's just a matter of now the party is not being, well, the PNP not getting complacent and continue to do the political work, and the PNP will be fine. And hopefully the people will be fine. If the PNP is fine. You know.
I'd love to mention one other thing too, yesterday, which is again, I think I'm not sure I made it, or I mentioned it in the article today, but you know, one of the things that in the heyday of the PNP, say between 89 and say 2006 with PJ Patterson's era, one of the things, and Michael Manley's era, one of the things that came out in a lot of the polls that we did was that when you ask people, regardless of how many people said they were going to vote for the PNP, when you ask people, why are you going to vote for the PNP? One of the key responses used to be, this is a party for the poor. And then the other reason would be party loyalty. So the PNP had a larger core support than the Jamaican Labour Party. In other words, there was a greater number of people who said that all you vote PNP and they would vote PNP again than those who said so for the JLP. Between the 2016 and the 2022 period, that focus on the PNP being the party for the poor dropped down to about number 5 in terms of reasons for voting for the PNP. What we're finding in the 23 onwards to now poll is that factor is becoming more important again. And it's not inconsistent with the thinking and the saying that people are saying, boy, I'm having difficulty because prices running with me and I just can't treat myself regularly and my family every day. It's not inconsistent with that. So now people are saying, and they apparently are looking toward the PNP as a party for the poor that might in fact rescue the situation. I'm giving you the data. It's not my opinion. My opinion doesn't count. This is the data that we are finding. So in addition to that, we're finding that the sort of core support of the PNP appears to be coming back. And these are two key factors that are driving that kind of leveling out. And remember, you know, there's a lot of hysteria coming from government sources. The average gap for the PNP between the 23 and 24 period is 3 percentage points. The gap for the Jamaican Labour Party between 2016 and 22 went up to 16 percentage points.
Now, if I may, with Ralston's and Collins' permission, this last poll would, if stand, would see a voter turnout of over 68%.
That won't happen.
Okay. All right. Because that was something that.
And let me tell you why you got that high number, for example. So 29% turned out 6 weeks before. We know still in an election mode, even post-election mode, and people are talking toward the next election. And by virtue of the turnout that was evidenced in the February poll, and the result of that election, more people are now tuned into the next election. So people say, yes, man, we're going to go to vote because the support that was a loss for the People's National Party during that period appears to be coming back up. But in reality, on election day, a number of factors are going to impact that number and depress it. Where it goes is another thing.
I told
So just a second, Anthony. I know Dan said he will stay, so I want to bring Professor Thompson in the discussion if he's still here with us. And
Yes, I'm still here.
okay, so I'm gonna bring you guys into the discussion. We're now going to go into the cut and thrust of the back and forth. So I'm gonna go around and ask.
Hold on there, Ralston. I think I see Dr. Kenny in the room.
Yes,
You know,
I just acknowledge.
yeah, could you acknowledge him and, you know.
Thank you.
So let me ask, I'm gonna ask each person and just go around. I'm gonna start with Professor Thompson. Your impression, what is your takeaway from the recent poll that was done by Don Anderson?
All right, thank you very much and good evening to everyone on the call and to your listeners. I made a tweet or post a couple of days ago, might have been yesterday before, which read to the effect, few things are more beautiful than a person with dexterity and skill who carries out their craft with expertise and remains humble in the execution of those tasks. And Donald is for me one of those persons who's one of those professionals whose work is a piece of beauty. It's artistic and scientific at one and the same time.
Thank you so very much, Prof. I really am humbled by those comments and appreciate them heavily, really.
You're most welcome, sir. I remember after the February 2016, sorry, not February, the February this year, I said that you were not right. You were bang on. The day before the election, you said that there was a 1 percentage point difference, and that played out in the results. The same thing in 2020. You said that PNP was behind that was 16 points, and the results showed that. In 2020, this was 2016, the same thing. 2007, the same thing. I don't know how much more right you can get if you get the numbers right to the last T. 32-28 called before the people's had vote cannot be any more. You can't say that's right. You said that's bang on, that's on target to the last letter. So I have a lot of respect for you, sir. Not because
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much. You know, the 2017 election was one of the toughest decisions for me. You know, the toughest things to communicate, I can tell you that. Because as I said, I was at Commonwealth Games with Prime Minister Portia when she was Minister of Sport, really good friend of mine, right? And I mean, a lot of respect for her, etc. And when she told me the Thursday before the 2007 election that she's going to win, I said, boy, damn, I'm not looking that way to me, right? And on Sunday on CBN television, I was pressed by Garfield Burford. I said, Garfield said to me, you can't dodge this thing anymore. Election is tomorrow. You have to call it now. And when I looked at all my data, I said the JP is going to win 32 seats to 28. That's what the outcome was on the next night. Now, when I say that was a tough decision, I say it against the background of the relationship that I have with Precious Simpson Miller. Okay? She was the Prime Minister. And when she called me the Thursday to say what it was looking like, I told her I agreed with much of what she said, but some areas I'm not seeing the same thing that you're saying.
Devil's advocate, though, Don. Devil's advocate, they might say that because you call it the night, you got the last minute voters to go over to the JLP side. The people who would put their minds late in the day.
No. I mean, it could be said. It could be said, but that's the devil's advocate. I mean, no. I mean, it was such a close election. Let me tell you where the bandwagon effect comes in. When a party seems to be so far ahead that they're not going to lose, and you say they're going to win by 17 points, that's when the bandwagon effect comes in. And a close election, no, it doesn't impact that.
I agree,
Doesn't.
Yes.
People go out and vote exactly what they think because they're too close to go jump side. Next thing they jump is like when you're in a line in the bank and you say, boy, this one look like a short, I'm going to go with this one. And the one that you leave is the one that moves faster.
Move faster, yeah.
You know what I mean? No, that don't happen in a close event. Not at all. No.
May I say two other things, then in answer to your
Sorry, I cut you.
question, then sir. I think it is a testament to the discipline of a scientist that he or she, in this case a he, Don Anderson, exercises such diligence and humility that you find it necessary you wrote an article earlier this year in a similar vein to this one, where you're seeking to bring the public into a better understanding of the craft and science of your work. Some scientists I know will say to the skeptical observer, go to hell if you want to understand, you understand. But you take a different approach. You say to the public, let me explain to you in detail how I do my work. And that only builds credibility. And there's a lot of lesson in that for all of us. That the scientist knows his craft, but more importantly, the scientist cares about people's thoughts and concerns so much that you take time to explain. Which reminds me of something an author said some years ago. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that is an important leadership quality that you're demonstrating.
Thank you very much, bro. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes, the other thing I would say very quickly is that I make it known that I'm a supporter of the People's National Party. I'm very critical of the party when I find it necessary. But if I were to advise the PNP, as I would advise the JFP, is treat this poll as a wake-up call. In the case of the JFP, you're behind. In the case of PNP, work as though you're still behind. Because in September of last year, I think, was a poll, the PNP was 3 points ahead, wasn't it? Down?
Yes, you're about, yes.
About. And by February, the JLP was 1 point ahead. Fortunes change, right? And that's, I believe that it is foolish for any political party to treat polls, particularly polling done by an organization that has a credible track record, to treat the polls as being voodoo or bought out. And I think, as you have kept on saying, I mean, with I think political polling accounts for less than 10% of your work.
That most definitely.
Yeah.
Most
So
definitely.
why would you go sell out the integrity of your organization when you have 90% of your clients who rely on you for scientific data to make major marketing decisions for the firms? So I would say to anybody listening, treat these polls as a reflection of the reality on the ground as at this time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Paul.
I want to hear your impression of the poll. I know you're not rubbishing it, but what is your takeaway from it? What is it saying to you? What, as a supporter of the JLP, what would you say to them in analyzing the poll?
So let me preface this my comment with this. I am doing my master's in mass media, and I just finished my statistics class. My final exam is on Wednesday, and we look at a lot of different sampling in that stats class, which make my respect for polling. However, first, when I heard the 8% swing, I was skeptical. To be very honest, I was skeptical. But my thing is simple. Whether it's 8% or 2%, I don't see it as a reason to attack the pollster or whatever. And that's why, and I'm putting it, that's why I was one of the person who, when Ms. Phillips came out with her comment, I was like, hey, no, we don't need to go there, because you don't shoot the messenger. You need to go and look what would have cost this 8% swing at the time. And listening to Don just now, it is clear. And that's why I said that what the JLP need to do is go and do what they need to do, because the PNP is doing what they have to do. The PNP was smart to say, hey, we have all this momentum going with us. Why not do a poll at this time, which might flow with that swing? And it's obvious. I mean, let's not put our head in the sand like ducks or whatever. It's obvious that in the election that just went, that there was a momentum with the PNP. There was a lot of factors. The PNP has been campaigning for over 2 years before and stuff, while as we can admit that the JLP was there not doing anything, making mistakes in government and all of that and stuff. So the people are seeing the PNP out there and getting promises and whatever and all of that bear into the local government election. There was momentum on their side, and they chose to do a poll at that time. I still believe that a poll is a snapshot of a particular period of time. And as Dr. Thompson rightly said just now, that yes, it is a guide, but it's not something that you can take comfort in, whichever way, whether it's for you or against you. So personally, I have no issue whatsoever with the poll and stuff. As I said, I think that the JLP and the PNP should take the numbers and appreciate it for what it is and go and do whatever work that you need to do. That's my opinion on that.
All right, come now.
Okay, hi, night again. All right, so, you know, a lot of what has been said so far is true. I agree with Anthony that a poll is a snapshot in time. But let it not be underestimated the work that the PNP has put in since Mark Golding has been elected as its president in 2020. Now, Mark Golding and the team, we have put in a lot of work. We have put in a lot of work. Mark Golding is coming from a place where he was hardly known. He's coming from a place where he didn't ever even contemplate that he would be the leader. And so he has had to work doubly, triply as hard. But
is he the leader?
Yes, he is. Now, apart from that, we don't only conduct polls occasionally. As Don Anderson will tell you, there is a poll regularly, not just national, but constituency polls, parish polls, right? I have had the pleasure of being polled already on separate occasions, nationally, and one of the polls that I was polled in was actually commissioned by the JLP, right? So I know that both parties use Mr. Anderson's work, actually commission Mr. Anderson. But be that as it may, I am personally not surprised by where we are, given the fact that, number one, the JLP themselves have underestimated Mark Golding. They genuinely did not see him as a viable contender. They have said so on numerous occasions. They have failed to even contemplate that Mark Golding could be neck and neck with Andrew Holness in a favorability rating. Now, just as Anthony just said, many of them are of this notion that Mark Golding is being led. What they fail to understand is that Mark Golding, as a corporate attorney, is a negotiator by profession. And so if there is a conflict, which is why I openly supported Mark Golding in the leadership race, because if there is a conflict, Mark Golding is going to resolve it. That is his job. That is his profession that he was trained for. Now, it has been said, I've heard Mr. Anderson himself say it on numerous occasions, that the base of the PNP did not vote in 2020. The base did not come out. What Mark Golding has accomplished is a re-energizing of the party base. You know, what shocked me personally is the fact that Mark Golding has somehow, for the first time in my recent memory, tapped into the 18 to 24-year-old age cohort, because I can't remember the PNP ever being neck and neck with the JLP in that age cohort from I start follow politics some 20 odd years ago. So the fact is that Mark Golding's leadership is new and different. And apart from that, you have to understand that politics is cyclical. There is now a generation of voters who don't remember what it is like to live under a PNP administration. For instance, my daughter, who is my second child, she turned 18 last week. She was born in 2006. When she became 1 year old, the government changed to a JLP. There was a 4-year period of the PNP in power, and then go right back to the JLP. She, as well as those in her age group, don't remember what it is like to be governed by the PNP. So they're just hearing these dumpy stories about traffic bureau and FinSAC and all of these things. Just as how the generation before
Don't play it up historical now, come on.
the stories about Michael Manley, because that's what they will say. The generation before, the 25, 34-year-old cohort would say the same thing, the dumpy stories about Michael Manley. And it's just the truth. So that is also another factor that you have to contemplate. That's how I look at the polls. But I think that it's high time as political activists, we look at the polls objectively and leave the emotions out of it. Because as you rightfully said, Anthony, a poll is simply a snapshot in time. And the important point to make is that we have to track the trend. Right now, obviously, it's momentum PNP. We just have to keep up exposing Mark Golding. I've said on this platform, this is about my fourth time here. I've said on this platform, to know Mark Golding is to love Mark Golding. And there is danger to the GLP in Mark Golding becoming more and more exposed to the populace. Because once Mark Golding becomes exposed to about 50% of the population, it is going to be all over for the GLP. I can tell you that.
All right.
All right, we're gonna have to go. As you know, my show starts in 15 minutes. So, Mr. Anderson, the pleasure was absolutely mine. Dr.
Pleasure was mine, Kamla. And please say hi to your mom for me. Please.
I will.
All right,
Take care.
go ahead, Colin.
Thanks, Kamala, thanks for coming.
Hey, man, take care.
If you wanna bring back
All right.
Commander.
Yes, I was just gonna ask Commander if you want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, sure.
Poll, sure.
Sure, yeah. You know, I do think that there's a need for political parties to coalesce around an idea of anti-corruption, right? And Mark Golding seemed to have that face at the moment. As Don spoke about Jamaicans who left, who had an affinity to a political party that they deemed to be for the poor, right? I don't think the people feel that affinity for the present GLP government at this snapshot which we are speaking about. So the poll seems to be very much in tandem with that idea. And hence, that's my conclusion.
All right. I know Anthony wanted to, were you going to react to something that Kamla said? Or you just wanted to weigh in? Because I have a question I want to put to Professor Thompson.
No, I was just pulling Kamla's thing.
All right. Professor, I want to, if I could, I'm just going to quote you because you made a post this today, which you said the PNP has its flaws, but you support them. And you continued by saying you criticize them when necessary. But at the end of that quote, you did say that wholeness is very corrupt, and you put very corrupt in bold. And that kind of piqued my attention a little bit. And I wanted to just ask you if you could, because that's a serious claim to make against a prime minister who is seen as the first among equals. Say to our listeners, our viewers, how do you come to such a conclusion and on what basis?
Ralston, may I slip in here? You don't mind if I slip out at this point?
Yes, please.
Right, okay.
And thank you, Dan, for coming. We really appreciate you for
my pleasure, really my pleasure.
So candid and frank in the discussion.
Right, you know, Professor, one of the maxims that I live by is that knowledge which is not shared is of little value.
Yes.
And therefore, as best as I possibly can, whenever I get an opportunity to share knowledge, share information or knowledge, I'm happy to do that, you know. And I take pride in the fact that, I mean, I get calls from students at high schools to say, boy, you know, doing a research paper. And I've never ever said to one another of it.
Yes.
Because to me, it is what's in me. It's part of my DNA to just see if I can communicate. And I'm happy that somewhere along the line it is making a difference, really. And that to me fills me with a lot of pleasure.
I said, I hope you're right, listening, because I want to be calling you doctor.
Thank you very much. I hear you.
All right.
All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to Dan, and thanks for the information. I am in a better place with your explanation this evening, and I am confident that I will calm some of the critics that, hey, no need to have the nerves flowing. Let's go and do the work.
As I said today, the last thing, I've never seen any empirical data that suggests that that kind of behavior attracts any more vote to you. So what's the point?
Right.
Thank you all very much again for having me, and it was my pleasure to all the listeners and to have shared with you. Thank you. Thanks for all the kind words.
Yeah,
All right.
welcome, sir. More than welcome. Thank you.
so much.
Listen.
All right.
All right, so I might take your question, Ralston, and I'm glad to be meeting Anthony for the first time. We exchanged across the airwaves on post, but first time in person. Greetings, Anthony.
Thanks, man.
Yes, you fall into a category I call my friends.
Those are the questions I keep very close, you know.
Yes, yes. All right, so to your question, Ralston, there are 5 things, and I don't know if you have time, it's done one passer. There are 5 things that I consider. The first is a maxim, Anthony, that says that truth is established by, among other things, multiple attestation. So when a lawyer, defense lawyer, or prosecution wants to make a case in court, he or she will call several witnesses to attest to the same point. Poll after poll in Jamaica has shown that a substantial majority, in science there is no such thing as substantial majority, either majority or not majority, but we can say it in common speech that a substantial majority, some 80% of Jamaicans believe that the Honest administration is corrupt or very corrupt. That's one. I'll say 4 more things though. All right. Let's go to why I think. So if you read the post, it says, I believe Honest is very corrupt. So let me give you 4 reasons. In 2023, last year, Mr. Honest was referred for corruption prosecution by the Director of Investigations. The Director of Prosecutions elected not to prosecute, not on the basis that there wasn't a substratum of fact, or that the allegations did not rise to the level warranting prosecution. She opined that the reason that it would appear to be an abuse of process to prosecute for an act which occurred in that case, I think 16 years earlier. Now, there is no precedent of which I'm aware in law which says that because the crime took place such a long time ago, you can't prosecute. That's one. So he was referred. So that is an objective measure referred for corruption prosecution. That's one. Two, and I will quit. For 2 years at least, and probably now a third, the Prime Minister is unable to explain his wealth, aka has not received certification from the Integrity Commission by a process of, if you could call it trite logic. If you can't say how you acquire your wealth, it means that there are nagging questions about the legitimacy of that. All right? That's 2. 3. The Prime Minister was asked whether members of his cabinet are under investigation. He imposed a gag order to say that they should not answer that question. and then said he asked far and wide. I would believe that a person who is a face, Mr. Speed, the face of anti-corruption, would ensure that just the might I call the judicial mention, because the IC is a quasi-judicial body, just the judicial mention of corruption in relation to persons who are in your camp, you would lead you to leave no stone unturned to find out who they are. And finally, the Prime Minister would be one of the six. And he has, in my view, the duty and the opportunity to say to the country, I, Andrew Holness, am not under investigation for corruption. That he has refused now for 10 months to say so. Must say something. You have a duty to give the country the confidence that your own personal leadership and life are free from corrupt activity. Just say, I, Andrew Holness, I'm not under corruption. And I refuse. Those are my reasons.
All right, Anthony. Do you agree?
You know I wanted to respond.
I know.
Anthony, before I respond, do you mind me, Dr. Kenneth, if I play that clip? Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Just for a second.
Go ahead. Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay.
It has become a political weapon, a political tool, trying to score points with the public. Public is very smart. Public looks out and says, you know, look at these people talking now. Look at what they did when they were going. They were the same ones asking us not to say anything. And here they are now asking us to say something. We take a position that the law as it is established puts in place a gag clause. I don't like to use the term a gag clause. It seems as if there is something suspicious or something big in. But what it is a protection for due process. That's what it is. If there are any issues, then it is not for persons who don't have the full information or the power to investigate, to adjudicate. And that is why we have placed the power in an entity, in an authority that has the power and the access to the information to investigate and then report to the public. There is cause for concern or there isn't cause for concern. But this business of trying to try people before an investigation is not the due process of our jurisprudence. And, you know, the question is still going to be asked. Are there members of my party who have been written to for this kind of illicit enrichment? My straight answer is that I have asked as far and as wide, I have gotten a response from everyone, but as far as I have been told, no. People have been written to, as the Integrity Commission does almost daily. But I have not heard of anyone in my political party being written to for this matter of illicit enrichment. What has been done with each person coming out and saying, no, I haven't been written to? Who genuinely can say that they are telling the truth? Really? I could have asked and someone could say, no, I haven't been written to. Because they may have not got the letter. The letter may have been sent somewhere and then they will come to that and say, you know, I didn't get the letter. In other words, this process is just political gimmickry that the opposition is showing. Let's be real. We built this process. They were a part of it. Let us support the process as it is and let it work. We have put several $1 billion into supporting and developing the Integrity Commission since its establishment. It is working. Everyone agrees there needs to be some refinement. For those people who are lobbying to change the law, I have no challenge with that. Democratic society, please lobby. But let us give context to the debate. The God clause, as it is being called, is not without its merit. Due process is important.
And there you have it. Go ahead.
And the Prime Minister has not said one word wrong there. Not one word wrong. I mean, the Integrity Commission was established for a purpose, and we should allow the Integrity Commission to do its work. Dr. Thompson mentioned something that the Director of Corruption had said that she will not prosecute because of a time span and whatever. Let's bear in mind that the IC came under fire not only from the government but from civil society for incorrect information in regards to the Prime Minister and stuff. For that particular accusation.
What incorrect information? What incorrect information?
In terms of what they were saying that he was supposed to be charged for.
Not correct.
Hold on. I don't think the information was incorrect. I think that what civil society, let me just correct, what civil society had an issue with was the fact that both reports were not tabled at the same time. The one for the charge and the one saying that we will not charge. So I think not that they were saying that the charges was incorrect, but that both reports were not tabled at the same time.
All right,
That's correct.
Another thing that Dr. Thompson.
No, but I think with respect, Anthony, you need to respond to the fact that your assertion about incorrect information having been there.
I accept Rostan's point. However, the other thing that I want to say is that isn't it that the Integrity Commission can write to the Parliament and say, these are the persons we are investigating at this point in time? Can
No,
they do
sir.
that?
No, sir. By law, they can't. Because the frame of their report is very the frame of what they report is very well defined. Once the report, let me just respond to this. Once our report is completed, they can write to the integrity, so they can tailor a report in Parliament outlining the facts of their findings and their conclusions. But to say that Peter or John is under investigation is precisely what the gag clause prohibits. But if I might just add this and then yield very quickly. But any person under investigation, so whilst the IC, to use a word from your field, Owen, whilst the IC is not clothed with the authority to name persons under investigation, persons under investigation have an absolute and unlimited right to say whether they are not under investigation. And the ethical position that I adopt and that others have is that if you as a CEO or a senior manager in an organization are under investigation in relation to something as critical as financial resources in your possession, in relation to that organization, which organization is now Jamaica, you have a duty to step aside. That is a custom and practice across every organization that operates under the ethic of responsibility and transparency.
No, Kenwood, I have to stop you right here. I have to stop you right here because
That's how it operates.
that what guess what? I want you to tell me what Kenwood and Owen. I want you to tell me under this JLP government, more persons who have been named, been corrupt or whatever, are either asked to resign or something. Under the PNP, that did not exist. None at all.
No, Anthony. In fact, right, I can hear you a lot, but we want to go. Anyway.
That's what is on the point. That's a side point.
Let me finish, because I need to finish.
Allow him to finish, please. One second, allow him to finish.
Where just like how the JLP said, hey, nobody, I don't want anybody who has been written to. If they say that, that's it. The PNP said they don't want anybody who was written to. Oh, then recently we see what happened in the Dwayne Vaz case.
No, hold on just a second. Let me correct, 1 second. One second, Owen, because when we have the discussion, I want us to make sure that we put the facts to the listeners. In the case of Dwayne Vaz, let us recall the Integrity Commission report spoke of 6 parliamentarians. It did not speak of ex-parliamentarian, which would indicate by any deduced reasoning that they are members of parliament sitting in the current parliament. Mr. Vaz was no longer the MP, so he could not be considered as part of that 6. So we have to separate that. We have to separate him from the argument that the PNP and the leader put forward that he has asked all his members.
There's another dimension though, Ralston, another important dimension. The documents in the public domain indicate clearly that the charge against Ralston, against Dwayne Vaz, is in relation to late submission and or failure to pay a fine for that late submission. There's nothing in the correspondence about illicit enrichment. So to cast that over it on the basis of your earlier strong point about lawmakers is perhaps and I mean very, very gracious is an unfair point.
Thank you.
Anthony, 1 second. I know we're going on a different tangent, but I want to bring it a little bit to the issue of the poll and just throw this into Lieutenant, because I know he speaks about how instructive polls are, right? And what we can get from them and how we have to read them. Let me ask you, Lieutenant. Yeah.
Rasta, before you ask me that question, I just wanted to ask Dr. Thompson one, I am going to read from, a paragraph from the director, what the director of prosecution has said. It says, according to the director of corruption prosecution, those substance evidence has identified the more charges for a noted offense. The prosecution would be hard pressed to resist an abuse of process application with regard to unlegal delay. Now, my question to Dr. Thompson is that is there a statute of limitation on corruption?
I am not aware of one, which is the base of my question. I'm not aware of one. So it seems to me quite odd that the director of corruption prosecution would posit as the ground for her not prosecuting a concern about the other side mounting and to what you've read. It is not the case that she has said that there is a statute of limitation. She's anticipating that the other side, that the accused would mount that as a ground. That's not your business as a prosecutor. If you believe you have a case, you proceed with the case on the merits of the case, and then deal with the arguments that the other side come with. It's like saying that if I charge a man with murder, his lawyer is gonna make an application for a no case submission. Therefore, I won't go. It's a non-argument with the greatest amount of respect.
Okay, thank you so much. Razan, go ahead now.
I wanted to ask Lieutenant, because he spoke about how instructive polls are, and you see us going getting into the whole idea of corruption and all of that. Based on your own understanding and based on what the polls have indicated, the PNP being fired, do you think then that corruption will have any bearing going forward in terms of how the party sees themselves?
Ralston, if I may say something with respect to the general discussion that Dr. Canute and my learned friend was having, and that is to speak to, like, yes, I'm a military person, and it's not that you don't have corruption in that in military or security organization. But I did my in Sweden, and one of the things that I found very, very, because as you know, Sweden is supposed to be the highest on the anti-corruption um, um, spectrum. And a Swedish politician took some baseball tickets. I think he visited America, and he was asked to resign. And one of the things that was said by a politician in the Swedish parliament or whatever it's called is that if something vaguely resembles corruption, it should be construed as such until the mechanics of it is resolved. But the people must set aside, they must set themselves aside. And while we're not there, and we haven't been there, you know, to say, I mean, our arguments are always to what degree of corruption was this side or that side. Well, if you're you can't be, there's no degree of pregnancy. If you're pregnant, you're pregnant. And you know, if one is in the driving seat, if I'm a leader, and nobody's gonna say, boy, commander, this leader did it, that. It's about me now. It's on me. And this must be the psyche that even we who are guardians of our party, guardians of opinion, that's what we must have. We must have. And I think Dr. Thompson made a very, 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 very important point in saying that there seems to be something very, very wrong because transparency seems to be, you know, veiled. There's a veil putting on, you know, and for me, ex-military, but Jamaican at heart, I think we have to reach the stage where we say, no man, leaders have to be far more transparent and don't use legal lacunas and to get out of certain things and so forth. You know? Coming back to your questions now. The question that you asked, I think it must be a very, very settled consideration to say that, look, political parties must coalesce around a culture of anti-corruption. I speak to Singapore, and I don't speak to it just with whims and fancy, because it is a very dictatorial type of person. Kim Jong-un. I'm not Kim Jong-un. And Lee Kuan Yew was very, 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 but he pointed around anti-corruption. You saw what he did when he came in power. His friends he jailed and we did jailed and cast out. So when a population can say, oh, because when I went to Sweden, I said, oh, the taxes are crazy high. And you know what the Swedish people say? But look at the infrastructures and the facility that our government gives us. What do you expect? You know, they go to Canada and say Canada is a dirty place. Swedes, when the Swedes go Canada, they say Canada is dirty. And a lot of people say Canada is. I'm just saying that we have to pivot towards transparency and forget, as I said, degrees of corruption and say whose corruption is of a greater degree. We have to move towards that place where we can say corruption or corruption, you know? And yes, an opposition has far less burden at any time because guess what? They're not government men, they're not in the driving seat. But lessons are to be learned from that.
Mhm.
And it is so they should pivot, Ralston. They should pivot to what that. I rest.
All right, Colin,
I think Mr. Speaker wanted to say something.
I'm in total agreement with the lieutenant. And I just want to add a word to this. In my field, we would say if you are the head of the institution and you, by any chance, are being investigated, you should recuse yourself from the process. Can you? That's the word. Recuse yourself from the process and allow the process to take its course. But with the Prime Minister
Correct.
and speaking so often on the matter and almost putting it in the hands of specific people or whatever organization to impose that order. I think that was out of order.
all right.
If I might add quickly.
Can I ask one question though? Do we have any evidence that the Prime Minister or any member of his party has been investigated? Can we categorically say that?
May I have a comment on that question? Please.
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, so two things. In the leadership of a country, in the area of ethics and the area of the preservation of norms, the criminal standard is not the only applicable standard or the most appropriate standard for assessing the rightness or wrongness, the goodness or lack thereof of a leader's decision. To say is there evidence that is under investigation is to suggest that it is only the criminal standard that applies. But my specific point, my friend and brother Anthony, is that the Prime Minister, in exercise of the higher standards of leadership, in demonstration of his commitment to transparency, in upholding the virtues of his inaugural address in 2016 and 2020, should say whether he's under investigation. So he could provide us with the assurance, like I'm saying, my fellow Jamaicans, there are 6 members of my party or 6 members of the parliament, let's be more accurate, who are under investigation. Your Prime Minister is not one of them. Say that and let us be confident that our Prime Minister is not being investigated. But by failing to say so, he incurs naturally, after 10 months, the adverse inference that he is.
No, the Prime Minister has said, the Prime Minister has said more than once And even on one of Cliff Youth's program right after the local government election, Cliff Youth asked him that question directly about it being investigated. And he says, no, he doesn't know of that. And stuff.
Sir, so Anthony, but interrupt for that, just a minute. The
Our minister did indicate, though, Anthony, that he has been written to twice for clarification
On his filing.
per declaration.
Yes. And he said that he has given them the whatever document that they're requested. He did say that.
All right. Owen, you want to come in?
No, I think.
All right, so here, I know, they've gone way over, and that's fine because we did start a little bit late, but here's my final question, and I'm gonna put this to everyone, and I'm gonna start with you, Anthony. Because in the poll results, it says, the same Don Anderson poll, 47% of Jamaicans are wary of the direction in which the country is heading. And commenting on that number, noted sociologist Dr. Harville Taylor stated that the JLP should be concerned, and he further went on to say it would seem that the majority of Jamaicans have pretty much fallen out of love with the Holness administration. How do you respond to that? Do you agree with him?
I don't. And I'm going to use a comment that Dan said earlier in the thing that the timing of the poll is critical. It's critical. And because of that, I could not agree that majority of Jamaicans are falling out of love with the JLP. Does the JLP have work to do? The JLP have a lot of work to do. I think that one of the problems that is plaguing the JLP right now is arrogance among a lot of its members. And I think that the JLP base felt ignored, and that is one area that they need to really work on. So in terms of falling out of love with the party, I would disagree, but I would totally agree that the JLP as a party has some work to do in terms of reconnecting with its base. And also another thing that I personally, and this is me personally speaking now, if Colin and I are running a business and our financial is coming out and saying, hey, we're making X amount of profit, but the persons who are working for us, we're still giving them minimum wage. So they're not feeling that profit that we are making. They're going to be angry at us. So for me, I am saying that the government need to start, let the people at the bottom of the ladder, way down there, start to feel some of that economic fortune that the country is now having. And I think that in itself will bring back the love, if I could use that term.
Losing the love.
Canute, you want to go next on that same quote?
Yes, the quote about the wrong direction. Yes, I would.
And the falling out of love.
And the falling out of love.
Yeah.
Here's how I would respond to that. And I'm doing so relying on a quote I saw earlier today. If the JLP can't recover from grave errors of judgment, including massive self-assessed pay hikes and extremely inept parliamentary conduct, it will continue to spiral downward. Macroeconomics cannot save JLP's viability after its inexcusable selfishness on the micro level. Macroeconomics won't convince public transport operators to vote JLP after long overdue inadequate increases. Macroeconomics won't convince public servants to vote JLP after they were browbeaten into signing onto dotted line for restructured salaries that often come with pay cuts compared to huge increases for politicians. Macroeconomics won't wipe the shame out of Valley Curtis's eyes or convince other public servants that they are not in danger of similar bully riding tactics. And I say, therefore, that the perception of the wrong direction is that the JLP government is touting macroeconomics as though those alone are what matter when people cannot buy their food weekly, when it takes at least $20,000 a week to feed a family of two on basic supplies, and the majority of the country are earning minimum wage or close thereto. The love has gone, and with that love has gone a lot of trust, because the government promised prosperity and has come with gimmicks, and people are now feeling tremendous pain in the face of weekly inflation and in the face of arrogance, as you have said, Colin, Anthony, massive arrogance by the leadership of the government.
All right, Lieutenant, do you have a comment on both? Has the people fallen out of love with the administration?
You know, Anthony has been brutally honest in terms of speaking about the arrogance, as you know, parties does get into when they're in power for any length of time. But again, it's falling out of love seems so definite and pointed. You know, a battered woman will still remain in the marriage until the door opens. She'll run for her life. So let's see. Let's see.
All right, that's a great analogy. Owen,
You have me popping up in a Lieutenant, but trust me, one cannot underestimate street data. In all of what we do, we have to always bear in mind what the street is saying to us. And Don and his men, his team went out there in the field, they went out there in the streets, and they got their data. Who am I to question? The truth is, if a large percentage, such as 48, is it 48, and up to maybe 70%, either not sure if the country is going in the right direction or saying specifically that they are going in the wrong direction, that's a large percentage. And one cannot underestimate that. The people on the ground are feeling it when they go to the hospitals and can't get a bed. The people on the ground are feeling it when they want to send their kids to school and have to send them on rotation, like send one for 2 days and the next for 3 days, that kind of thing.
Don't forget about the bandwagon effect that Dan spoke about earlier, though, because of the timing of the poll. So you can't leave that one out.
But Anthony, you got your few minutes to say what you would have wanted to say. So I am
beat you today, Anthony.
What the truth is that when for instance we see a stalling in the judiciary system, and people look on at that and see that they are not getting justice, and I can bring forth a case, one prominent case where, for instance, the past president of the Police Federation went to court to do a hearing, and it is taking 2 months before he can hear an injunction, and the decision cannot come back to him. When people are feeling these things and they have followers out there and so on, and they feel aggrieved by some of these situations, they are going to fall out of love with whatever and whomever is leading them at this time.
Mhm.
When you enjoy that, it's already won.
Colin.
Yeah, I think we are way over time, so as we wrap up the show, right? What would you say to the PNP and JP as we forge ahead? I'll give that one to Dr. Camden Thompson. I mean, all of you don't step, but I start with Dr. Thompson.
Could you repeat the question, please?
What would you say to the LP and PNP as we forge ahead?
Okay, I would say three things very quickly. One, that remember the qualities of the behavior, leadership qualities I highlighted in Don Anderson as a professional. The quality of humility. I believe that one of the things that will win back respect for Andrew Holness is a demonstration of what I call the pre-2016 humility and concern. The fact is that a lot of people, including myself, believe that he was simply grandstanding and was not being his true self. And we're seeing his true self now. But if he can convince people that he truly cares about their well-being, then that is an important element going forward. I say to Mark Golding, demonstrate by word and deed that you truly care for people. People do not care about you unless they are convinced you care about them. But of course, the government has a lot of baggage in this regard. Having browbeated public sector workers into accepting 20% and then giving yourself 200% is a hard ask to try to convince people that you do care. Fighting tooth and nail to keep a specific employee, the DPP, in place when you showed such grave disrespect to might I say a person not of the same standard in Miss Curtis is a hard task to convince people that you care. But the first I'd say is showing that you care. And the person, the leader who can show that care is going to win the day. The second, I would say, is to show that you have a plan that is inclusive. And what's an inclusive plan? A plan that demonstrates that there's priority for education and educational opportunity. A plan that shows that there is a way of keeping communities clean. A plan that indicates that workers in what I would call cash-rich sectors, in the petroleum sector, in the tourist sector, that these workers can get wages that are reflective of the profit in those sectors. And the third is simply being a person to your word. Part of the challenge we have with this government is that it says the right things and does the opposite. And corrupt behavior is one of the most corrosive kind of thing that is undermining trust. It is the elimination of corruption and its replacement with transparency that's going to win the day. Those three, in my view.
Thank you so much. Anthony?
So I would simply say to the PNP is that they have improved their communication and stuff, both on social media and other aspect. You can say a lot when you're in opposition. You can make all the promises and stuff when you're in opposition, but when you're in leadership, is a different story. And if we should use the PNP track record, which is what the Jamaican public have to judge them on, then I would simply say that people will see the PNP for who they are. If I say what I would say to the JLP, don't ignore these numbers. Don't just shoot the messenger in terms of a person's like Don Anderson, market research and whatever and stuff. but take it for what it is and go and do the work because there are work to be done. So don't get caught up in the noise of the market. Go and do what you have to do. So that would be my words to the JLP.
Thank you so much. Commander?
Well, I know everybody here is going to love me. And why I say that, Tony and Dr. Canute and Sir Speed, is that I remember when I went into Civil World, I was seconded for 7 years to an organization in the Caribbean. And when they were going around the table and they reached me last, I would say, ditto, because the first person probably said, everybody coming down the line said what I would say. So I say ditto.
Okay.
Yes, well, what I want to say is, first and foremost, I really appreciate being here, along with this esteemed panel. And two is that I always like to remind people that a day in politics is an awfully long time, and there is always more work to be done. There's no room for complacency. I'm telling both parties that I don't know if the JLP would be in a position to be complacent, but every single candidate across the length and breadth of Africa for the PNP needs to understand that they have to go and do the work and not take comfort in the fact that the PNP is in the lead, because that is not going to help if something happens out of the ordinary tomorrow morning and renders the PNP in a bad light with the public. There must always be the recognition that there is a court of public opinion that is out there at all times, willing and ready to try you. And the people have the power in this land. So the voters have the power, and we must treat them as such.
Okay, thank you very much. You have been watching and listening to the Irie Myrie and Friends show. We thank our guests and you, our valuable audience. We know you have a choice, and we are glad you have chosen to join us. Until next week, when you hear my voice again, on behalf of my co-host, Radstan Chamberlain, this is Colin saying goodbye and have a great week.
All right, guys. Thank you, gentlemen. Nice having you again. Look forward.
Nice meeting and talking to your commander.
Pleasure is mine. Pleasure.
Everything over that government is coordinated and strategically directed.
Anthony, all the best.
My respect, Sir Speed. All the best in your endeavor too. Yes. I hope they can find a seat for your quick video.
Why?
Why? Listen, this is not my opinion on my part, You see, I always respect people who put themselves up to serve. And if you put yourself in a position to serve your country, I mean, that is commendable. The balance will be left up to the people to decide.
Yeah, all right.
All right.